Welcome to the last fungi photography of 2025. Some of you will be relieved, some of you may be a little sad, but still, I'm going to take you through one or two more images from start to finish. Let's crack on. This video is kindly sponsored by MPB. So I found a subject to work with. Well, actually I found a lot of subjects to work with, but I think I'm going to settle on this cluster of Mycena fungi here. It's like a little family with two slightly older and larger funguses carrying their young, their children on their back, sort of like a monkey does. And so I'm quite intrigued by framing up this little family portrait here. Now I have noticed every so often there is a strong gust of wind coming through and it's just gently vibrating the edge of these larger caps because they are sticking out slightly. So I'm just going to watch that for a moment and see how often that is occurring and whether it's going to become a problem, and if so, I think I can pick this log up, this branch up, maybe move it somewhere a little more sheltered. So I'm just popping myself lower on the ground, and that is better. There's definitely less movement there. Brilliant. Time to frame up. So I have framed up this scene how I think I would like to photograph it. It's almost there. I'm just going to sit with it for a moment and tinker with very, very minor adjustments just to make sure I'm happy with it. What I really like is this bit of bark at the bottom that curves over to the right. It sort of mirrors the curves of the caps, which is quite nice. I'm thinking a 16:9 sort of frame and shaving off the top bark and a tiny bit of the bottom. I think to do that I may need to pull back very, very slightly, as we're going to be packed in quite tightly, and I like to give just a tiny bit of room for my subject to breathe and grow into the space. Now this scene is pretty simple. Something just landed on my head. It's probably a leaf. There it is. This is a pretty simple scene. I don't have a foreground, I don't really have a background. All the background is just the bark. So I don't really need to check for any distractions between the camera and the subject and in the background that may distract your eye from going straight to the main subject, the funguses. So I'm pretty much ready to start taking photos. Now usually in my macro photography I use a base aperture of f8, full frame. And I will tinker with this depending on the scene. If I have a lot of background detail that I think is creeping in too much, I will then use a wider aperture. In this case, I'm going to get background detail in, that bark detail in anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. I could afford to use a narrower aperture with a deeper depth of field, so f11, f14. However, I don't want to sort of go f16 and beyond because I may then introduce diffraction into the image, which could cause a loss of fine detail, a loss of quality. And I love as much detail and sort of high quality as I can within my macro photography personally. Now, even at f10, f11, see how shallow my depth of field is as I move the focus through the scene, through the subject. It is near impossible to get a whole scene, a whole subject in complete focus in one shot, really, in macro photography, because depth of field is generally just very shallow. So this is where I personally decide, and it's not a necessity, it's a choice. You do not have to do it. This is where I decide to focus bracket. So focus bracketing is a technique where you take multiple images of a scene at different focal points and then you stack all of those images together into one image in post-processing. Some cameras like my D850 can automated bracket in camera for you, which is essentially just a faster process in comparison to doing it manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually focus my lens just slightly before the very edge of the subject that is closest to my camera lens. I'm going to make sure that my lens is in autofocus, because autofocus is needed for automated bracketing. And then I'm just going to go to the bracketing menu. And here I'm going to choose how many images I would like the camera to take, and the step width, which is the focus increment in between each image. Now, common question, Courtney, how do I know how many images to take and what step width to choose? And unfortunately, this is not a simple answer, and it would be a very long and boring video for me to explain it completely in full. But essentially, it depends really on your aperture. It depends on how close you are to your subject. It depends on the magnification that you're shooting at. So the settings that I choose for my full frame setup differs from the settings that I would choose for my micro four thirds setup. In terms of how many images should I take, many macro photographers, including myself, just simply set the camera up to take a high number of images, such as 100. And 100 photos sounds like a lot, but depending on your magnification, how close you are, the size of your subject, you may need 100 photos to get it sharp from front to back in focus. You may not, and if not, then you've just got a whole chunk of blurry photos that you need to delete in post-processing. However, your camera will either go through all 100 photos, or it will stop when the lens reaches infinity focus, which could be at image 50, and then you've got 50 images instead of 100. Now, focus width is going to tell the camera how far to shift the focus in between each image. And this is important because your focus must overlap within each image, otherwise you're going to miss sections of your subject and you're going to get blurry, soft parts in your final stack. It just won't smoothly blend together. Now, 1 to 5 focus width is usually for macro photography, but again, what you decide to use really depends on multiple factors, and it's just worth experimenting with different step widths to see what works and what doesn't work. So for this scene here, I'm at f11 1x magnification, so I don't have a really high magnification. I could sort of get away with a step width of 3, 4. However, because my subjects, there are multiple subjects, they're really, really close together. They're overlapping slightly. There's a lot of very fine detail and texture within the caps and the gills. I'm going to go with a step width of 2, just so that it is a bit more precise. Now, this will take more images in my stack, but that is what it is. Let's just do it. There's a lot of tech talk. Let's just take the photo. Right, that is the first image taken, and I think I'm going to build on this by getting creative with some lighting. So while I go and gather all of my kit from my camera bag, I would just like to take this moment to thank MPB for sponsoring today's video. If you're looking for a new macro lens or a camera that can automated focus bracket, MPB is my go-to to buy, sell and trade in used video and photo kit. Gear doesn't have to be expensive. You can save money buying used, but also by letting go of your unused kit that is sat at home gathering dust on a shelf or in a cupboard. If you've got something to sell or trade in, then go and do an instant quote with MPB. Just pop in what it is that you're selling, the condition of it, and when you're happy, accept your quote, pack it up and send it off. You don't even need to leave your house if you don't want to. MPB offers a home pickup service and drop-off point options so that you can sell and trade in with complete ease in any way that suits you best. Once MPB has received your kit, their team of experts will inspect it, approve it, and then you'll either be paid within days or receive your new bit of kit. Go and give them a go yourself. I'll leave a link to MPB down in the description box if you'd like to try them out. And thank you once again, MPB, for sponsoring today's video. And back to the photography. So as I got some light out to play around with shadows, I realised that I really like this as it is with natural light. if I wanted to play around with light, I was kind of just restricted to lighting from the front and maybe slightly from the side because that branch was in the way. So I found that a bit restrictive. I have this lovely little duo here, and there's a bit more space, especially around the back, for me to pop lighting in. And so what I'm going to do is grab a light and just start moving it around the subject, watch how the shadows change, and that way I can see and decide where I want to start putting lighting. So I've been playing around for a while now with lighting and testing loads of different options out at different angles to try and see how I can get the effect that I have in mind. And I think I have finally figured out, and it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to use some warm lighting, and I'm actually going to contrast it with a cool white balance, so I almost get a split tone, two-tone image. Now I am struggling to set up my lighting. Specifically, I'm struggling to balance the LED panels with warm light on this tree trunk. It's not easy. The Adaptalux light balances perfectly. However, I just can't get the light on both funguses at the same time as I would like it to be. So what I'm going to do is a bit more complex, and hopefully this works out. Essentially, this could go wrong, but I'm going to take 3 different stacks. Now the first stack is going to have no lighting. I'm going to choose a cool white balance so the image looks quite blue, and underexpose the image very slightly. So for the last 2 stacks, I'm going to light these funguses independently. So first I'm going to light for the left fungus, lighting on the left, and then the third stack will be the lighting on the right. And hopefully I can get this blended well in post-processing. So this is the natural light version, and after having sat on it for a little bit, I actually don't mind this at all. The two-toned image, however, didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped. I managed to blend the images together, aiming to make it look as though these fungi were sprouting from the embers of this piece of wood. But the background has this distracting texture in it that keeps pulling my eye away, even though you have to zoom in really to see it. And this is actually rain, so it was raining pretty hard while I was taking these images. And you can see in the natural light version, as well as this test image that I took earlier, that the background is much cleaner. I don't mind this version. There's a bit of haze from the LED light in the bottom left because it was so close to the subject. But in terms of this image, I'm really not keen on that background, and I'm also not keen on replacing my backgrounds in post-processing. That's just a personal preference. So I'd probably leave this as it is, but I may consider just discarding this image as one that didn't quite work, because I'm super picky and I'm not particularly happy with it. But I am happy with the first image that I took before. I pulled all 100 images into a Helicon focus, excluding anything in focus behind these 3 small mushrooms, as well as the blurry ones at the start of the stack. I usually find method B works best about 90% of the time in Helicon focus, but as I stacked these images, I felt as though there was too much bark detail. It kind of looked odd to me, and so I reduced the number of images in the stack, letting most of the bark texture fall soft and the base of the fungi and the 3 smaller ones to be a little out of focus as well, creating a gentler background. The edit itself was straightforward. I prefer cooler white balances. I upped the vibrancy and gave the contrast a bit of a boost. I decided to darken the bottom right corner and then in contrast brighten the top right where the natural light was coming from, just so that the funguses stood out very, very slightly. Otherwise I just made really small local adjustments until I was happy with the image. I think that this image overall was a success. I'm pretty happy with this, I think, and actually the longer that I sit on this family, this group here, to me looks as though they are aliens. The larger 2 sort of flying saucer-esque,
So it's funny how your perception of an image can change over time. So I'm trying to think of an image name for it that sort of incorporates that sci-fi sort of vibe, you know, the landing party, first contact. If you would like to name my little aliens and come up with an image name, feel free to in the comment section. I did get these printed. For some reason, I've given this one a super large border, a larger border than normal. I don't know why I did that, but these came out pretty well. I actually ordered these on the print space instead of printing them myself. Usually I do print my own images, but I'm having issues with my printer at the moment. So at one point it was printing all of the oranges and reds vivid pink, and I think I have sorted that out, but now I have a few other problems with it. I've had this printer for numerous years and it's worked perfectly fine, but all of a sudden it's just completely revolting against me for no apparent reason. So I use the print space to print these, which is not the cheapest place to go and print your images. However, the quality is usually pretty good, which is why I tend to go towards them if I need somebody else to print my images for me. So I think that is it for me and my fungi this year. It's been a pretty good season. I have a few images that I'm super pleased with, and I don't think that this is a bad note to end it on, to be honest. So yes, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you next time. In fact, this is what I'm up to next time. Next week, chaos as I attempt deer photography one more time. That was probably the closest I'm ever going to get to the deer. And if I ever do get that close to them in the future, just a couple, a handful at most, not the entire herd, because it really was quite terrifying.